my colleague Aasheesh Sharma caught up with former Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull at the Jaipur Literature Festival. Prime Minister Turnbull visited India as Prime Minister in 2017 and he's bullish on India. Let's listen into what he has to say.
Yeah, look, I think it's important. Defending democracy is very important. Now, the Americans have demonstrated that nation building doesn't work, and going in and trying to tell people how to run their own countries doesn't work, as they saw, particularly in the Middle East or in Afghanistan. But ultimately, you can't live in a world, or we don't want to live in a world where might is right. Now, obviously, as you know, there's that saying, God is with the big battalions. There's some truth in that, but the rule of law is critically important internationally, particularly for smaller countries like Australia. That's why we support, we're in the Quad, that's why we support all the regional groups. This was Shinzo Abe's vision of the free and open Indo-Pacific, and basically ensuring that countries were going to be free to run their own affairs, essentially chart their own destiny without being bullied by big powers. The China-Russia relationship is a very interesting one because, Russia is now, every year it becomes more and more the junior partner. And of course it used to be the other way around. And they are so dependent on China now and so vulnerable to China. Siberia is scarcely populated, and Colin Tubron, the travel writer, was here talking about the Amur River, and I used to spend a lot of time in Siberia in the early 1990s, and they're very vulnerable to China. I'm honestly not sure what Putin is trying to achieve in Ukraine. Because if he's seriously trying to recreate the old Soviet empire, it's utterly doomed. Utterly doomed. The cost, the folly. So you've got to say, if you look at Xi Jinping's situation, if you say that his allies are Russia, engaged in this catastrophic war in Ukraine, North Korea, who are, essentially a rogue state, a criminal state, ruled by hereditary tyrants, and Iran, a theocratic tyranny. It's not. They're not. I'm sure they're not the allies you'd really want to choose. So I think, in a sense, all of these Russia, Iran, and North Korea have made themselves pariahs because of their own action, and they have therefore gravitated to China. But China's a much more responsible. Let me put it this way: China is associating with countries that are not in its league. Put it that way. No, the trade is not enough. And look, it's. The reality. There's reasons for that, when you look at India's share of global GDP, it is much larger than India's share of global trade. India does not have a big role in global trade because it has not been an exporter of manufactured goods in the way that China has been, and of course it has always been very protectionist. It's not been easy for foreign capital to invest in India. And one of the, I make this point in my memoir that when I first met Mr. Modi, he said, you've done a lot of business internationally. I see you've done a lot of business in China. Why none in India? And I said, well, truthfully, at the time when I was doing business, which was really in the 80s and 90s, and in particular, India was too hard to do business in. Well, I think it's, I think the critical thing is to improve, if I could say, I think the challenge for India is you don't want to be in a situation where you have strong economic growth, but you don't have much in the way of jobs growth. So you need, the services, China took a different approach, but I think services are a critically important sector, not least because they employ a lot of people. And I think one of the biggest objectives has got to be to increase household income, because the more households' income they have, the more they can spend on services and so forth. Yeah, I'd like to see that, and I think there's enormous potential there. There's a very large Indian community in Australia. There would be, India is the largest source of migrants to Australia. We're a very proudly multicultural society. There would be, we're a country of 25, 26 million people. There would be at least, I would say about 1.5 million people of Indian heritage, and that's growing all the time. And of course, those diaspora communities have, fantastic links to their home countries. They've got, relatives and connections and so forth. So I think the Australia-India connection's only going to get stronger. But India's protectionist sentiments are obviously a barrier to trade. But that's quite deliberate. That's a choice that India's made. Well, Modi is admired and respected all around the world. He is admired particularly by politicians because they'd love to be as popular in their country as he is in India. He's a very charismatic leader, and very respected leader. So, there's no question about that. I think in agriculture, I think we can do more cooperation there. I'd like to see more in clean energy, renewables, solar. There are, Australian scientists and engineers that I know are working with Indian companies, including Adani, to develop, a big solar panel, factories in India. So, I think there's plenty of potential. But I don't see Australia. It's unlikely that India is going to develop a steel making industry that of the scale China has, that will result in huge exports of iron ore to India.
News9 Plus. Download now.